Hey guys, welcome back to Fin Scales and Fluffy Tails. My name is Bryn, and today I'm gonna be filming part 2 of how to get a dog and how to pick a good breeder. So in the last video, I explained the differences and similarities between puppy mills and backyard breeders. And so today I'm gonna be talking about the pros and cons of adopting a dog from a shelter, why people look for breeders of specific dogs, and what to look for in a good breeder, and typical things that a good breeder will do. So let's get right into it. So shelters are a really good option when you're looking for a dog because there's so many dogs out there that need homes. And the thing is, one of the best things about that is you're not supporting bad breeders because you're supporting the rescue organization who does everything they can to help save animals. So you're not giving money to someone who's just going to continue breeding dogs just because they can, and you are actually helping animals, so that is a really good thing. Of course, you're giving a dog a good home that needs one. And there's lots of mixes and even some purebreds in shelters, which not a lot of purebreds, which we're gonna get into that. There are some purebreds in shelters, but good breeders don't contribute to the shelter population. So these dogs are more like purebreds. So they're purebred, but not necessarily well-bred, and I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. But basically what I mean by that is there's a dog out there for everyone in a shelter, potentially. There's lots of different breeds, there's lots of different coat types and textures and energy levels and ages. Like, you can, if you look hard enough, you can almost find anything you want in a shelter. And one of the best things about going to a shelter is they're not as expensive as a breeder, at least initially. So now with a shelter dog, you might have to pay for extra training later on because maybe the dog is a handful and you don't know how to train certain behaviors out of them, because some dogs do come with emotional baggage that you will have to work through. They could have health problems later on in life, but at least the initial cost of adopting a dog from a shelter is not as much as a breeder. So instead of paying $1,200 or more for a dog, you are paying anywhere from $40 or $50 to $500, depending on the age of the dog, what kind of dog it is, things like that. So those are 4 good things about getting a dog from a shelter. So, with everything, there are downsides, and people don't like to talk about the downsides of getting a dog at a shelter, but I am going to talk about them today because a few years ago, I wanted to get an ESA. I wanted to adopt a dog from a shelter, and I wanted to get an emotional support animal. That just didn't work out for me. So me getting an emotional support dog didn't work out, but I was looking, and I liked looking on Pet Finder. And what I found is that shelters are very picky. And some people say that, well, breeders are very picky too, but breeders are picky because they care about the dog and they want to make sure that the breed is right for you and that you made the right choice and that you've done research. And shelters do care about their dogs, so they do have to be picky, but in my case, I was having trouble even finding a dog that I could even potentially even apply for to adopt, and I'm gonna tell you some of the reasons. So as I was looking on Pet Finder, I found that a lot of these shelters required that their dogs had fenced in yards, even for small breeds, which is insane to me. So I was looking specifically for a Shih Tzu or a Yorkie because my fiance does better with low shedding breeds. And so I was already looking for a small dog. I wanted to be older. I was looking for a senior dog who was older and didn't have as much energy, so that it would sleep most of the day while I was in class, and then whenever I got home, I would spend a lot of time with it and take it out for walks and such. And you know, even when you're researching those two breeds, they say that they're pretty good apartment dogs, but these shelters were requiring fenced-in yards even for a small dog. So, you know, with me being a college student and living in an apartment, that obviously wasn't going to work for me. Another requirement that and a lot of times these were multiple. So like they required you to have a fenced in yard, and also that you work from home or you were a retired couple. And like, I'm a young person. I'm not retired. I have things to do, but I still feel that I could provide a good life for a dog. But they said, oh, you have to work from home or be retired, or you can't have this dog. So obviously that dog wouldn't be right for me. And a lot of shelter dogs don't get along with other dogs. So if you already have a dog and you're looking to add another one to your family, or you want to have multiple dogs in the future, you wouldn't be able to adopt this dog because it doesn't like other dogs, so it would have to be an only dog. Some dogs are not okay with kids. So if you have children already, or you're younger like me and you are not sure whether you want kids, but there's a possibility that you could have kids in the future, then you can't get that dog either because it wouldn't get along with your children. Also, if you want to take your dog places, you wouldn't be able to take it to like any type of family function that kids were going to be there. You would have to leave it at home all the time. Another thing, some shelter dogs don't like cats or other pets. So if you have a house rabbit or a cat and the dog doesn't like those things, or the shelter is worried that it would attack or hurt the animal, then you obviously can't have that dog either. And another thing that I don't have written here that I just thought of is that some dogs must be adopted together. So some dogs actually come as a bonded pair when you're looking for them in the shelter. And if you don't want two dogs, then you obviously can't get those dogs either. Another thing that some shelters require is home visits. So even before they approve you, they come to your house to make sure that your house is adequate enough for the dog to live there. And if your house or your apartment doesn't meet their standards, then you won't be considered at all to adopt that dog. And another thing that I found that I thought could have possibly been difficult was vet references. For me, I've never owned a dog before, so I've never had to take a dog to the vet. But at that point, you know, I haven't had a pet that I have a vet to reference, and I didn't really look into it more because, like I said, I don't have a dog. But I suppose I possibly could have called the vet and been like, hey, I need to have a vet as a reference. I don't have a dog, but could you be a reference for me? And if I didn't have that, you know, maybe they wouldn't even consider me at all. So those are the pros and cons of adopting from a shelter. And if those types of things, you know, turn you off from adopting from a shelter, there's many reasons that people go to a specific breeder to get a dog. And the first reason that people go to a specific breeder for a specific breed is because they want a dog to do a specific job. Now that could be a service or therapy dog. If you want a dog that you can train yourself to be a service dog, or you're getting a dog for like if you like, what am I thinking of? Seeing eye dogs. Seeing eye dogs are a good example. They are particularly bred for that type of job. And so you would need to go to a facility to get a dog like that. Now, other dogs that you can train yourself, you should go to a breeder who breeds for health, temperament. Those are the two most important things. And if they're doing those two things, they're probably also breeding for conformation. But you definitely need to go to a good breeder if you want dogs like that. If you want a hunting dog or a dog to do a farm job, so a herder or a livestock guardian, you will need to go to breeders who do that specific thing, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit. the difference between working lines and show lines, but you can't just get any dog. I mean, I guess you could just get any dog and try to train it to be a hunter, but there are dogs that were bred specifically to be good at hunting. And there are dogs that were specifically bred to be good at doing farm jobs like herding and livestock guardians and things like that. So you would definitely want to go to a breeder who does those things. And another job that you want for your dog is if you want to do agility competitions. Not all breeds or specific dogs are suited for this activity, and if that's something that you want to do, then you might want to look for a dog that is specifically good at that job. Another one is conformation. This is a specific job that you want a dog to do, and conformation is breeding a dog to fit the standards. So this includes showing. So if you watch, I don't know what channel dog shows are on these days, possibly Animal Planet, maybe even ESPN, because I know dock diving competitions, there's another one. Dock diving is a competition that you can train your dog to do, and not all breeds are suited for that. But conformation, so anytime you watch a dog show, those dogs were specifically bred to look and act and be like the standard says, to keep that breed looking and acting like it's supposed to be. And showing dogs is considered a sport. So I think they're maybe shown on ESPN. They used to be shown on Animal Planet when I was a kid. So that is a specific job. You cannot just show any dog in conformation. It must be a show quality dog that the breeder deems, okay, this dog fits the standard pretty closely, so it's gonna be a show dog and go to a show home. Another reason to get a dog from a specific breeder is because of allergies. Like I said in my last video, in my specific case, my fiance and his entire family is allergic to dogs, but they mostly do better with lower shedding breeds, and shelters do their best guess at what the dog breeds are, but they don't know. And they're not gonna pay the money to do DNA testing on every single dog. So if the dog that you're getting that you think is hypoallergenic is mixed with anything that sheds a lot, that could change their coat and the amount of dander they produce. So then you could end up having to give the dog back to the shelter because you or your spouse or whoever in your family ends up being allergic to it. So it is better, in my opinion, to go to a good breeder and get a dog that you know won't upset the allergies. Because one thing that my fiance told me is, he's like, I don't want to get a dog that I could potentially be allergic to because I'll fall in love with it and then we won't be able to give it up. Even though it would make his life miserable for a long time. And another reason to get from a good breeder is if you have other pets. So if you have a cat, or in my case, I now have a house rabbit. And me personally, I would not trust an adult dog that I did not train around my rabbit. Not that I would ever let a dog and my rabbit interact without my supervision, but I am in a rabbit group on Facebook, and a lot of times, the owners, rabbits and dogs can be friends depending on how the dog was raised, but everyone knows that dogs are predators, rabbits are prey. Rabbits make fast movements sometimes, and they aren't always slow. So you will need to have a dog that you train from the very beginning that your rabbit or your cat is a family member and not a chew toy. And this could also depend on breed, because some breeds have a higher prey drive than others, but puppies are better to get and train them as they grow up if you have other pets. And the last reason that I could think of to get a dog from breeder is if you have kids. And this could be hard because, if you have a hectic household, bringing in an older dog, this might upset them. And especially if you have children and you don't have time to deal with the emotional and possibly mental baggage of a shelter dog that was possibly abused, or you don't know their past, it could be hard to train a dog like that when you already have children. and you want the dog to be accustomed to your lifestyle and your schedule, and you need a dog, especially if you have kids, you need a dog that's tolerant. And I'm not saying you can't find that at a shelter, but you have to be extra careful when you go to a shelter because you might not know that dog's background. Unless that dog was an owner surrender and the owner told the shelter everything about the dog, you probably won't know. And it's one of those things where you can explain to a 3-year-old not to go near the dog when it's eating because it has a guarding issue, but your 3-year-old, and they might understand, but they're probably gonna make a mistake. And 3-year-olds can't read dog body language, and eventually there's gonna be a mistake made, and if the dog is not tolerant, it could possibly end in disaster. And unfortunately, usually the dog is blamed in that situation. I believe that parents should be teaching their kids how to interact with dogs and other animals appropriately, but altercations, especially when you're living in the same space, are inevitable. And your dog needs to be tolerant and used to your family. So not everyone will be looking for a dog from a breeder just because they have kids, but that is one reason that they would look for a breeder, is if they have children. And before I get into the things that you should look for in a good breeder, I'm going to tell you guys one of the biggest misconceptions about show breeders and things like that. The biggest misconception about show breeders is that they are also, along with backyard breeders and puppy mills, contributing to the shelter population, and this could not be further from the truth. Show breeders do not contribute to shelter populations because in their contract that you sign, which I'm about to explain, they tell you that if for any reason, for the life of the dog, that if you cannot keep the animal, that you return the dog to them, and they will either keep it for the rest of its life or find it another home. So their dogs are not being dumped in shelters because they care about their puppies. They care about the breed in every single puppy that they produce through their line. And with that, that is why we need to support good breeders, because if we didn't have good breeders, all we would have is mutts and poor examples of the breed. And I'm not saying this to be mean to those dogs, and I'm not saying I hate them. I'm saying that they don't have good genes. They don't have good genetics because they weren't bred with care like the purebred dogs are. And I'm not saying that purebred dogs are better than mutts. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to tell you guys the information that I have found out and just give you information so that you can look into it yourself if you want to. And possibly, because if we continue to support backyard breeders and puppy mills, they will continue to produce unhealthy dogs. They will continue to produce dogs just for profit, where instead of getting puppies from them, we need to be going to show breeders to get our dogs. We need to be going to them, because if we did, there would be less dogs in shelters all over the country. If we supported them and the AKC, then we would have healthier dogs for the most part, and there would be less dogs in shelters. And so now I'm going to be going over what you should look for in a breeder. Not all show breeders have a website, but I really like when breeders have a website. And not just any website, but a website that they keep up to date. If a breeder doesn't have a website, at least at this point, I don't even consider them. For me, the breeder must have a website, and it must be up to date, maybe within like a year. Because I'm looking for breeders who are still breeding and still showing. Because if their website's not up to date, I don't know what they're doing right now. So that's what I look for. On their website, if they do have one, they will have pictures and the awards of their males and females that they are breeding and showing. they do health testing on their dogs. So when you ask them for the health clearances of their dogs, they will show them to you. They also have a health guarantee on their puppies for a year or two, depending. So when you buy a puppy, they will guarantee that the puppy will be free from genetic defects for at least a year. They will sell pet quality dogs on a spay-neuter contract only. Backyard breeders and puppy mills do not have this. A spay-neuter contract means that you must get the dog spayed by a certain time. Thankfully now breeders have lengthened that time. It used to be you had to get your dog spayed by 6 months. Spayed or neutered by 6 months, because for females they can go into heat at 6 months, but now they're starting to wait longer because they realize the importance of the dogs keeping their sex hormones for longer before they get them spayed or neutered. For females, you should wait till after their first heat to spay them, and for males, you should spay them between 1 and 2 years. A good breeder will be there for the life of your dog. Anytime you have questions, you can email or call them, and they will answer your questions about the breed, and they will help you with training and food and whatever you need. And a lot of them are also, like, to be a good show breeder, you need to have a sponsor. And if you want to do that, then some of them, if you're really dedicated, they will agree to sponsor you. And like I said before, they will take the dog back at any time throughout the dog's life. They will take it back at any time because they don't want their puppies to end up in shelters. Their puppies are raised in their home, in their house with them, and they will be pre-socialized. Now, you will still have to continue the socialization process when you bring your puppy home, but they will have started the socialization process and possibly even started potty training them. They will let you meet the parents of the dogs, at least the mom, because sometimes with breeders, they have to pay a stud fee and maybe the father doesn't live with them, but they will at least let you meet the mom and possibly even the dad before getting it. They will know everything about the breed and their specific line. So if you have questions, they will be able to answer them, and they will know the problems in their lines or like what they've been working on to improve in their own lines. Another one is they only have a few litters per year, anywhere from like 1 to 3, depending on how many bitches they have. But they're not breeding their dogs. They're not breeding their bitches, because a dog is a male and a bitch is a female. So they're not breeding their bitches every heat cycle. And they wait until the female is 2 years old before breeding them. With backyard breeders and puppy mills, they do not do that. With puppy mills, as soon as they come into heat, they're breeding them. With backyard breeders, it could be an accidental litter, or they just don't know that they should wait. But the dog should have a more mature, the bitch should be more mature before she has a litter, so she can raise her puppies properly. The prices are more expensive, but they are comparable to other show breeders. Show breeders of Shih Tzus all have about the same price. And that's how it is. They're more expensive than like backyard breeders, but they're comparable to the other breeders of that breed. And another thing that good breeders have is a waiting list. They have a waiting list for their puppies. They don't just sell the puppies on a first come, first served basis. What they usually do is they have a waiting list of people. So you have to fill out an application to get one of their puppies. They don't just say, oh, you have the money, you can have the dog. They do not do that. They want to make sure that you did research on the breed. They want to know why you want this particular breed, and they want to do their best to match you up with the puppy that you want. So they take into consideration your gender preferences and color preferences. And most breeders do actually require that you pay a deposit to be put on the waiting list. That could be anywhere from $200 to $500, but that price usually goes toward the price of the puppy. So I'm on a waiting list right now for a puppy, but that's only because I didn't have to pay any money. but normally you do have to pay money to be on the waiting list. And the last thing I'm going to talk about for show breeders or for good breeders is that you should be looking for a breeder who shows their dogs, because they are doing this to prove their breeding stock, so you know they are breeding to the standard. Now, here's where I'm going to branch off and talk about working lines. If you are getting a dog to go hunting with you, to be a livestock guardian, to be a herder, these specific dogs, especially in the working group, have show lines and working lines. If you are getting a dog to do a specific job, then you need to be going to breeders who do those jobs. Ideally, if you want to get a border collie to herd for you, you should be going to the country somewhere in the middle of nowhere to pick up a puppy from someone who breeds their dogs for the working ability. Because there is a difference, and in my research of dogs, I have learned this, because dogs who are bred in working lines aren't necessarily, the breeders don't necessarily care as much about looks. What they care more about is their ability to work, their ability to hunt, their ability to herd, and if that's what you want, that's what you need to look for. If you're just getting a family companion, I suggest you go to a show breeder, because you'll be getting the healthiest dog possible and you're supporting someone who loves the breed and supports the breed. If you're getting a working dog to work, most of these breeders breed for working ability and temperament, but mostly working ability. So if you're getting a working dog that needs to work and you want to work and it's gonna have a job on your farm, or you're gonna go hunting with it, like a beagle or a lab or a golden retriever or border collie, Australian cattle dog, Australian shepherd, like any of those dogs that you are getting specifically to work, you should go to a breeder who breeds working lines, because that is where you're going to get the dog that fits your needs the best. And I wanted to talk about that because I have realized in recent years that, especially in working breeds, there's a difference. Now for toy breeds, that's not really the case. If you're getting a lap dog, in my opinion, you should be going to a show breeder or a shelter, because a dog that's a toy breed is bred to be with you and love you and keep you company. And show breeders breed for that too. They breed for temperament. So that is something that you will need to be looking for. So that is part 2 of how to get a dog and what it takes to look for a good breeder. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope this has inspired you to do more research into this and not just impulse buy a dog from anywhere. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Fin Scales and Fluffy Tails, and I'll catch you on the next one.